I know the city has pledged to develop 2,000 units over the next couple of years. That seems like a pretty daunting task.
Mm-hmm. And so that wasn't necessarily the city on its own, that was sort of me. But it's a big number, but I've always been of the belief that it's better to aim high and to try to set lofty goals and be able to accomplish them. And we've had, so we've been dealing with this housing crisis. The silver lining in that is that we've had so many people reach out that have land or have money or have ideas that want to be a part of the solution. Mm-hmm. And so the city also has a 10-year housing and homelessness plan where we're in the sort of the 5-year review of that. And there is a building housing working group that is going to be repurposed to be, and it's a notice of motion coming forward at Monday's meeting, to be basically like a council housing action task force.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of people on the private developers that have reached out to say, I have X property, I want to do something. How do we work with the city? And so there's been a lot of work happening on that file too. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's feasible, and again, there's so much community will. And this is one of the great things about Peterborough is that people reach out and want to give back. Right. And we have a lot of people who have said, I've lived in Peterborough my whole life and I've got this extra property that I want to have something positive done with. Yeah. And so Councillor Gary Baldwin and I went on a tour last week of a property in East City that a gentleman owns and wants. Basically, it was like, can we put like a tiny home village there? And so there's all these ideas coming out. And we're working to try to bring those to fruition. Yeah. And we know that there is all the expertise around, like when we're talking about tiny homes.
Yes.
There's several developers locally who have done it or who do the manufacturing and want to see it actually happen.
That'd be pretty exciting.
It is, yeah. And so, there's just the questions around, tiny homes get really small in the winter if you're stuck in 300 square feet. Right. So when you build those kind of things, you want to make sure that there's a communal sort of space for socializing and for getting out of the tiny home in order to meet with neighbors and chat with people. So there are best practices mostly in Europe, but also in other places in North America where that's been done. And people reaching out saying, I want to build a laneway house. I want to do this. And it ties into the official plan that I know you want to talk about as well, where we've been looking at how do we change some of the zoning and the bylaws to allow for those types of buildings.